Thank you for joining us this evening for a very special event which showcases the Art in the Time of Crisis project. Inspired by Columbia nursing students Janine Inez and Alden, Art in the Time of Crisis is a collection of narrative writings and artistic pieces sourced from the students, faculty, administration, staff, and alumni of Columbia nursing communities. The project directly addresses the intersectional themes surrounding the current anti-racism movement and lived experiences during COVID-19 crisis. The collection stands as a memorial to the unique experiences of individuals at Columbia Nursing during this time. This evening, you will see a collection of the submissions that comprises the collection and hear from Janine and Alden about their experience, as well as from Rita Sharon, who founded the program in narrative medicine at Columbia. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to thank Janine and Alden for their creativity and dedication to this idea, and to Jeannie Churchill, Vivian Taylor, and Letitia Hansen, who served as a driving force behind the project. Thank you too to Rita Sharon for lending her expertise. In addition, I would like to acknowledge Linda Muscat-Rim and Laura Phillips from our Office of Strategic Communications and Marketing for their support in bringing this project to life, and to Janice Grady and Sharon Sobel, and from the Office of Alumni Relations and Development for putting together this important event. Thank you all. And now I am pleased to introduce Janine Inez and Eldon.
Thank you, Dean Frazier. In April 2020, I had a gut-wrenching conversation with a peer and a friend who was working for the first time as a CNA, where she shared with me what it was like to lose her first patient ever to COVID-19. What struck me most was that she kept blaming herself. I carried her words with me and began to think that if we didn't take action as a community, we would soon be overwhelmed with a generation of nurses suffering from trauma, nurses like my friend. A month later, another Black man named George Floyd would be unjustly murdered by law enforcement. And that sinking feeling would return, a feeling of frustration, of righteous indignation, of exhaustion, and a feeling of concern for my peers and fellow people of color who were living through these twin catastrophes. It was from this feeling and through the aid of my peers and faculty advisors that the Art in the Time of Crisis initiative would be born. I will admit, I have a personal connection to art with a background in writing for screen and television, which I studied for my undergraduate degree. During my time at Columbia Nursing, I have used film, poetry, and essay pieces to archive and commemorate the ineffable experiences I shared with my peers, faculty, and staff at our school. I discovered my passion at the union of nursing, philosophy, and art, and I fell in love with the practice known as narrative medicine. Nursing also has a rich history of making art and contributing to narrative medicine, and there is research to support the efficacy of engaging in artistic expression as a way to process difficult emotions in healthcare workers, emotions that accompany experiencing death and dying. In the submissions for the Art in the Time of Crisis project, we saw those emotions being expressed, but we also saw other, more optimistic emotions as well, such as hope, perseverance, meaning-making, and community building. The Art in the Time of Crisis project is more than just a Columbia Nursing initiative. For me, it's a memorial to the lived experience of one of our most harrowing trials as a people, an ode to the nurses and healthcare workers who sacrificed everything on the front lines, and a message of hope for my friend and for new graduates like her. My dream is that it will not be the last of its kind.
These stories, our stories, are real, emotional, and profound. We witnessed the virus take its toll on so many families, particularly families of color. We felt its effects from the moment families stepped into the hospital, through their journey across multiple care settings and their hopeful transitions home. We saw how our city changed, how our world changed to address this insipid threat. The way we say hello has changed. We now carry masks and keep our distance and continue to witness the curves, breaking news, the mass protests for the very soul of our nation. Through these extremely difficult times, we continue to show up each and every day as nurses, putting all of that training and inheritance that we carry from our days at Columbia to work. The Art in the Time of Crisis collection has united Columbia graduates from as early as the 1950s to as recently as 2020, evidencing the transgenerational nature of nursing and how these twin pandemics affect each of us in differing, but also similar ways. Through these pieces, we saw the holistic care that nurses are known for and how it lives through our ability to connect to all aspects of the human experience, in sickness, health, and even at the time of death. Through all of these difficult emotions and experiences, we nurses are there for families. Through thick and thin, we are there holding hands, singing songs, and sitting together in silence if necessary. For me personally, art takes the form of a powerful exercise in catharsis. It allows an avenue for the processing of deep emotion while at the same time telling a story that impacts the observer in different ways. Writing poetry has been an avenue for me to explore the raw emotions I have lived through in a situation. It has provided me a way to meet those feelings head on, interact with them, and grow. The Art in the Time of Crisis collection memorializes an important moment in our shared history at Columbia Nursing, but also evidences the power narrative medicine can have in healthcare, the power to provide an outlet for individuals to feel, express, interpret, and be without limitation. This is a process that can lead to healing, understanding, and compassion. This is why we must continue to push forward in expanding humanism in medicine. Art in all of its forms should be celebrated and promoted as an important tool in our personal and professional lives.
I would now like to introduce Dr. Rita Sharon, Executive Director at CUIMC Narrative Medicine and Professor of Medicine. Dr. Sharon has a long history in narrative medicine, which is a practice and philosophy in healthcare that uses the storied experiences of individuals in clinical practice, research, and education as a vehicle for healing. I met Dr. Sharon for the first time in my interprofessional education course in spring of 2020, right as the pandemic was just beginning. I was awestruck by not only for her love of art and its various forms, but her ability to illuminate the nuanced meanings of artistic work and to inspire her students with the courage it takes to create and share their own narrative pieces. I felt that having her as an additional layer of insight in this project would only serve to elicit overarching meanings and themes across the pieces, and I am honored to introduce her now as she shares some of these insights.
Janine, thank you. Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Alden. Thank you, Dean Frazier, and certainly all of the Columbia University School of Nursing for having this tremendous inspiration to bring this work not only to us here at Columbia, but to all of you who are alums or current students of the Columbia University School of Nursing. It is a most unique project, which tells us how unique our School of Nursing is. I feel honored to be introducing you to this body of work that we will see in a moment, called Art in the Time of Crisis. And I think Janine and Alden have described very acutely what these, not crisis, but crises are. Many of you here are here as nurses, as health professionals, as healers, and all of us in our own ways, even if we've been, locked down at home for most of this, have endured the shock and the rage and the fear and the mourning and the dislocation of these global insults. We are isolated. We are alone. And often we can't even recognize what has happened to us. Do you look back and say, what happened? It's all a blur. I mean, I look, I say, oh, it's April. And I think, now wait, when was that? I think, oh, it was 2 weeks ago. No, it was 2 months ago. So we have been taken out of our space and we've been taken out of our time by these events. Now, is it not my extraordinary, pleasure's not right the word, satisfaction that the Columbia University School of Nursing has turned to narrative medicine and art to come to grips with our experience. And Janine, you so nailed what it is we do in narrative medicine, because it's a full-fledged discipline by now. It's a clinical, aesthetic, and I'm going to say scientific discipline through which we not only express and kind of get rid of, as in a catharsis, but we come to comprehend and integrate what we've been through. So in addition to being a creative outlet, this work that we're about to see, and these are works of visual art in many media, and they're works of literary art in many genres that we will hear in a moment. They are not only an outlet for creativity, but they're an outlet and a means for encountering the self and encountering others. We say, why art? Art captures what we know before we know it. It captures what we know that we cannot otherwise tell. And that's why we write. That's why we paint. That's why we sculpt. That's why we dance. That's why we play the oboe. And the viewers or the listeners or the receivers of this creativity have their own discovery. Because when the art is true, the artist and the viewer, the artist and the viewers, there are many of you here with us, and we're counting on you to make this actually truly art, because the artist and the viewers are taken out of themselves, almost in an act of self-forgetfulness, while coming home to themselves in self-discovery. It's a great mystery. This is the aesthetic process. Hans Georg Gadamer, the phenomenologist, puts it best. Listen, he says, what rends him home from himself at the same time gives him back the whole of his being. So that we, in creating or in receiving the art, we're not just getting pleasure, although there's a great amount of pleasure. We're not just getting comfort. We're getting back the whole of our being. And the result is a remarkable and profound contact among the artist and the viewer. Again, it's a phenomenological tenet that the art gives us access to a shared world. And we realize very simply that we're not alone. It's not a simple thing. So this is remarkable work that we're about to see. This is skilled painting, other media of visual work, poetry, personal essay, memoir. I don't think we have fiction, but I don't think we have fiction. But these works, now to bring us back to Columbia University School of Nursing, these works prove that nursing brings a person intimately in contact with the hardest parts of life. The suffering, you know, I don't have to itemize. The suffering, the loss, the death, the decay, the risk, the pain, the hopelessness, the wondering always and never knowing for sure what is the right thing to do. And I believe that in total, the works in the art of crisis show that nurses accept the fact, and this is the hardest part, that they too are mortal, that they too have bodies, and that they too will die. So what I'm saying is that with this artistic skill, these nurses become seers, visionaries, who are able to reach to the heart of this matter of mortality. One of the works we will see is by Jin Park. It's an essay called Modern Ars Moriendi, which means the art of dying. And in medieval times, there were many essays and visual artwork that helped the people in the Black Plague to understand how to die a good death. And they used the media of art to do that. Well, I've decided that the works you're about to see are not ars moriendi. They are instead ars vivendi. That means the art of living. So from the horrors and the ashes and the deaths of COVID and the racial injustice pandemics, you nurses of Columbia, I almost said we, that's how close I feel to your project and your efforts. We, among the nurses of Columbia, have fashioned these tales and images of living and of giving and of courage and of presence, and they stand as models for us all. So I'm now going to invite you to join us in viewing, in receiving, in witnessing the art in the time of crisis.
The silenced. The birth of a new day selflessly welcomes the spoils of yesterday. Walking, thinking, breathing, stop breathing, still walking. So tired is the day. Each step coddled with a fervent fight of intention. Ignore the gaze of haze. Victorious is the forced ponder of an innocent day, free of malice. Unbearable truths denied, veiled eyes preferred. The whisper of false truths heard as clashing cymbals. How deafening is the sound of turned backs, silent voices and rolled back eyes. Such lavish honesty. A carelessly tamed tongue now defiles and springs up with violent truths, an ambitious deed to dissemble cemented thoughts of depravity. Another expected loss. Oh, why such a thing? What is this thing? Where is its genesis? The absent limbs of equality, soulless shoes, crippled fate, painfully visible. A son held hostage, no release to lay upon the skin of the naked. Make it sun-kissed. A stillbirth reality, no mercy or grace, such destined, void of the day. Such a tiresome, dedicated dance. Toes pointed, toes strong, then weak, toes bruised, then bleeding, shoes soaked and heavy. Where is this selfish robber? Where are the spoils? What is left to spare? The goods of youth and grave both stolen, no petty ransom, simply taken. No attempt to beguile, that is saved for the worthy. Now, a resounding yes to a selfish pause. Breathe.
The click of a lighter, candles burning, wax covers the foot of a statue of Saint Michael. Her knees are bruised and sore. Echoes fill the bedroom from days of pleading with the holy. Tears falling on photos. There is laughter. There are pools of despair and frustration that stain the carpet. It's been 21 days now. The patriarch continues to fight for his life. The tug and pull of life and death. He dreams of Ecuador, shifting through fields of pink roses. He takes a deep breath and sees his wife. Consuelo is laying down watching the skies. The nurse wipes his eyes and adjusts the ventilator settings. Muffled voices and writing on glass walls. He turns around as the sunlight blinds him. Squinting for a moment, he glances. Are you calling me, daughter? Eres tú, mi chiquita? Is that you, my little one? It's been days upon days, eternity, an epoch and an age. In her broken English, she shifts through her mind to understand the call. She's visited almost daily, her words hanging alongside a sea of hope at the entrance to the hospital. She trembles, silent as she arrives, barely letting out a whisper, her brothers holding her upright. Her eyes meet my eyes, desperate for respite, desperate to be seen and understood. I clear them to enter as they somberly walk to the place where time has stopped, where a history has come to an end, where a storybook has been closed. The air is thick from the souls departing. The air is thick with fog that follows death as she arrives draped in the feathers of the condor, as she enters once again to claim another body. It's been 21 days. He died on the 21st.
One of my favorite video games begins with the line, "War never changes," and I believe it to be true. Our justifications for violence, our excuses for domination, protection, enlightenment, manifest destiny, these may shift and take new form like a shapeless tide, but the action itself, the action of war, never changes. It is the simultaneous murder and suicide of a lamb. And the soldiers that fight in a war are not the only ones who know this truth. Ask the mothers, the daughters, the wives. Ask the best friends who look into their friends' eyes and see the novel wounds where an innocent soul used to lie. I do not think you have to be a soldier to go to war. I think a war is taking place in our neighborhoods, our hospitals, our homes. Insidious terminologies snake their way like vines into our mouths and into our minds. Front lines, body count, hero. We are all in the ethos of a soldier in the trenches, but the enemy is invisible, and in truth could reside in any one of our teammates, our loved ones, ourselves. War does not change, but it does change you. And in the throes of my own mortal combat, I offer a stratagem to combat this. Hold the lamb in your blood-soaked hands. Do not let the growing, almost deafening sounds of 7 p.m. war drums drown out its last goodbyes. Savor and venerate them as you would a newborn's first cry. Frightened, fresh, and inimitable.
When will the sun rise again? My glasses are fogging. Is my mask on right? I fight the urge to stick my gloves up under my shield and adjust it. I'm already in the room with my patient as she coughs so hard her entire body shrivels inward as if to cushion the blow to her lungs. She looks so fragile, the opposite of the patients I typically see on the maternity unit, just one floor above us. 2 rooms over, a loved one has been given special permission to come say goodbye. I'm not in the ICU, but my patients with DNR orders are dying. Normally, I see some of the first breaths a person takes after they enter this world, and now I'm witnessing some of the last. My patient tells me she's nervous, but she didn't have to. I can see it in her eyes. This is our new reality, her and I. We're experiencing this pandemic together. It feels like a formidable bond. When she's cold, I add blankets to her thin, fragile body. When she calls to say she's hot, I don my PPE once again, readying myself for battle against a nearly invisible virus, and go in to help make her more comfortable. The dance continues, hour after hour, until somewhere outside, the sun must be beginning to rise. In a couple of hours, what has been the most exhausting night of my short nursing career will end. But will it? The sun might be out, but is the night over? When will this darkness finally pass?
Death is usually far removed from our daily lives. We don't talk about it, think about it, or entertain the possibility that it may happen to us. Of course, ordinarily, we simply may be too busy to dedicate time and energy to such an exhausting topic. Lately, though, we don't have a choice. Death is everywhere. Headlines put the glaring truth front and center. Thousands are dying of COVID-19. Death, it seems, has touched almost everyone and everything. Obituaries include entire families, morgues are overflowing, and every normal thing, including buying toilet paper, has been impacted by the possibility that death is much closer than ever before in our lifetimes. In our current crisis, and as the death toll looms, we find ourselves again looking for a guide. Scientific literature about treatments, all of it hastily and hopefully published, has exploded in an attempt to create one. Millions of meditation apps and gurus have sprung up overnight. Churches are virtually overflowing. People are searching everywhere, looking inward, outward, and all around for peace. What if this is the key to our modern ours?
Weeks prior, someone might have had family with them, roses and eucalyptus at their bedside. Maybe their child or sibling or parent would have held their hand, someone to let them know they were not alone. I guess, in truth, everyone dies alone. The nurse called the family, then we started back to provide post-mortem care. On the way, the nurse responded to another. Yeah, hold on. My patient expired. Expire. Expire. Verb. Cease to be valid. Come to an end. Die. Only I could not help but think about an expiration date on food, meaning, colloquially, no longer good. Sheets tossed into the soiled linens bag, there lied a body before me. 70 years old, diabetes mellitus. There was a recent below-the-knee amputation of the left leg. No phantom waiting here. I watched my hand stretch out and close the eyes. Passive. My purple nitrile fingers lifted the chin to close the mouth. Neither breath nor air now. I helped immobile patients before, but what if I felt a cadaveric spasm? I looped a tag on an intact toe. Several were necrotic. As we placed him in a zipper bag, his head lolled over. An eyelid opened. I looked him in the eye.
We watch each other carefully. With X-ray vision, we scan for the signs. Do you have the mark upon you? Will you be one of the hordes foaming at the mouth? Are you my downfall? Social distancing belies the intent. There is nothing social about it. The fragile thread of community broken in an instant. Panic is aerosolized, and accusations fly on speedy wings. Our senses are quarantined, no touching, no seeing, soon no hearing or tasting, just to be safe. Let's lock ourselves away, give us a curfew. Am I the voice of reason? Soothing nonsense with measured calm and practicality. You're fine, I say. The bark is worse than the bite. Tell me why. Why do I still feel apprehension's icy fingers at my neck?
The broken pieces are not truly broken. Like a canyon cut by flowing waters, I am crafted. By experiences, reactions, choices, and feelings. The grooves and notches can be painful, give unwanted texture. Closeness in time, in space, magnifies these. But when I climb to the rim, I see my fullness. I see my fullness. I see my fullness. I see my fullness.
Thank you. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you all for staying with us. This was hard. This was, there is a cost to viewing works like this, especially when it resounds in our own individual personal lives. I want to just take a minute to look with you what we have brought you through in this montage. We began with the peril. We began with omens of danger, with foreboding. One of the early essays says, "What is this thing? What is this thing?" We brought you in the piece called Silences, face to face with the silence and the roar of racial injustice. What was called the absent limbs of equality. So that from the beginning, our nurses did not think only of the viral pandemic, but also the pandemic of not just disparities, but disparate deaths and shortened lives on the grounds of race and class. We did not flinch in the face of death. Think of the, this was Alden's piece. He's working as a screener and lets in, apparently day after day, this Ecuadorian family who they don't know, but he probably knows somewhere within himself that the elderly patriarch is not going to survive. I don't know, but I imagine many of you have been experiencing your own flashing back, the deaths that happened in your own practices or in your own lives. So that we how can I say this? We guided you to name the absences of this time. And we gauged the impact of the isolation, the distance, the rending of bonds that typically make up our social world. You know, the suspicion of contact in the poem that talks about the malignant virus. There are a number of portraits of these nurses with patients who are dying and have died. And the one poem that ends with "I looked him in the eye" is unforgettable. I'm not sure, Janine, where this image came from, but I will never forget your instruction to me. Hold the lamb in your blood-soaked hands. This is the work of a real poet. But we didn't abandon you there. We didn't abandon you there. There was an arc to this evening. And we let the arc of the show bring us upward toward not empty-headed optimism, but some of the sources indeed of healing. The healing powers of nature, that marvelous budding cactus somewhere in Texas. The capacity of the art to help us thrive. The hope that we are now strong enough to recognize. The photo of the coffee shop on Avenue A and what was it, 8th Street or 10, I forget, way east on Avenue A. And there's this coffee shop that stayed open through the whole bloody thing as those people were on their way to their work in the hospitals. This is probably on his way to Bellevue. So we end, of course, with Jeannie Churchill's Happy Place, with that ever-present nature, the ocean. She's on the shore. That sun is streaming in as it sets. And then we leave with the final notes of Erica Chen's Amazing Grace, still in the air. So we leave you with this grace, this hope, this power, and this community of healers that is the Columbia University School of Nursing. We're very grateful that you came with us on this journey because you have made it real. So I will turn now to Alden and Janine, who will host a question and answer time because some of the artists are here and you all must have lots of questions of where the work came from and where it's going. Good night. I'm just so happy that you've been able to share this with us.
Thank you, Rita. Yeah, and thank you again to everyone for joining us today. So all the submissions that you saw today will be displayed at the Wallet Gallery at Columbia, and this project will be featured in the spring issue of Columbia Nursing Magazine, which will be mailed out in May. We also wanted to make it known that the Art in the Time of Crisis project continues to this very day to receive submissions. So if you want to create art, share a story through art, you can submit. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our society in many ways and still continues to affect us in ever-changing ways. We continue to see racial injustice in our nation, most recently with our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, gun violence, and many other difficult situations still occurring all around us. Art, now more than ever, can aid in helping to tell the stories that heal. Now it's time for the Q&A segment. So we have prepared a few questions, but we invite members of the audience and those present to share their thoughts and questions first. So please feel free to leave your questions or comments in the chat or to simply unmute yourselves if you feel comfortable doing that. And as we get questions coming in, I guess we'll just get it started. And Janine will present the first question just to kind of get us in the question and answer process.
So this question is for any artist who is featured in the collection and wants to speak. What is the message you would like individuals to take away from your piece?
Well, I guess I can, as one of the artists, answer this question. So for me, the message is that, you know, we have entire universes and microcosms that we intersect with every day. You know, we might be getting a cup of coffee or might be dealing with a patient and their family, but each of them are microcosms. And my piece, if anything, was an ode to the universality of death, but also the particulars of culture, religion, spirituality, and how that manifests in the dying process in the moment of dying. So really hope that all of us clinicians just take more time to connect with our patients in that spiritual, religious, esoteric level at times. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Alden. Feel free to unmute yourself, Jen, and share.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen. I wrote the piece, A Modern Ars Moriendi. And I think one takeaway from the piece that I think is important is that we can't let this be a passive process where we let COVID happen to us. We have a choice to do something about it, whether it's introspection or helping someone else or making art from this pandemic. And I think that's so important that we process and then we do something with the circumstances that we're given.
Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else want to talk about some of the inspiration that might have come? Oh, hi, Pat.
Hi, so I'm Patricia Fogelman. I was part of the first DNP cohort several moons ago, and I've since moved into a medical director position for palliative medicine and rural health. And, you know, when our surge started to happen, it looked a little different than what was happening in the city, but nonetheless super scary and pretty intense given the scarcity of resources. And the one thing I think this experience has really shaped is this very incredible awareness of our vulnerability in practice, and that our capacity to, you know, deliver good care, our intentions to deliver good care, and to really continue to care for these patients as whole people and whole persons can still transcend above that fear and that vulnerability. And, you know, some of it was a little out of the box thinking, like, how do you communicate effectively? How do you work with families? But a lot of it was really being able to kind of prepare yourself mentally and emotionally to kind of go into these settings and do the work. And so I give everyone who is part of our healthcare team in this country doing this work just a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation, because I think that, you know, what we've done as a community of healthcare workers is nothing short of exceptional. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you for
participating.
So one of the other questions that we had prepared, if others don't have any questions in the chat yet, if someone wants to talk about maybe what was the most challenging part of making this piece and submitting it. I can speak briefly that I think what I struggled with most writing my poem was doing justice to what I felt was a lot of the suffering and just sheer emotion and distress that my family and friends were all sharing with me that I was experiencing. I wanted to find a way to put that into words. I think I did, but sometimes you can never know. So that was a hard part.
I agree with you, Janine. I think that translating emotion into an artistic medium is always like the true challenge. You know, are we conveying what we're actually feeling on the inside? And, you know, I thought at the time I created this that I was conveying, you know, kind of like, okay, we're in this to do the work, you know, we're here to do the work. And I have a friend who's an artist who looked at it and she was like, ooh, I sense your, you know, I really see your fear and your vulnerability kind of underneath your intent to go in and do this anyway. And it caught me off guard because I didn't necessarily think I conveyed that intentionally, nor did I intend to convey that, I think. And so that was a little bit of a, do I go back and revamp this? And, you know, my exploring art kind of came about in the last year or two, you know, and I've gotten this new iPad and, you know, it's like teaching an old dog new tricks. You know, I have an Apple Pencil now and it's a whole big new world for some of these creations. So I think sometimes it's exciting to see what you create, even if you weren't intending to do that in the first place.
Absolutely.
I can take off from that wonderful point of view because you aren't always so sure what you're creating at the time you are. And I'm the artist who did the very first piece called Approaching. And it was January 20th of 2020. So it was we only had the slightest inkling at that time. And I also have a degree in public health from Columbia. So I'm very aware of epidemics and I've worked in public health my whole career. So when I heard about this virus, you know, it was in the back of my mind, but that's all it was. And so I just want to encourage people to not worry about anything other than creating, because sometimes it's so subconscious, and that's okay. I didn't set out to make that piece the way it was. It just happened. And I trust that in myself. And thank you so much for including it. It means a great deal to me. And, you know, in terms of age, you don't even begin to think about it because I graduated in 72. I'm almost at my 50th anniversary. So this is a real honor to be part of this with all of you. And I'm learning so much from all of you.
Amazing, thank you. It's an honor to have you here. Yes.
One of the things that was difficult for me about creating this piece was I went into the alley behind my house and I had this freedom and I had space to move and to be me and to share that with somebody. And at the time I was working as a CNA and my patients had a room that they were stuck in, that they were afraid in. And I got to leave them behind every day and I got to move and they didn't, and that was difficult.
Thank you for sharing that.
You know, kind of going off what Anna said, I found with doing that photograph of the sunset, how do you find beauty when there's so much tragedy surrounding you? And is it right to try to find beauty when there's so much tragedy surrounding you? But you need to find that beauty to be able to get through the tragedy and move on. And I found that with the sunsets and realized so many other people did because they were looking for that routine, that beauty, and knowing something that you could count on every day. The sun would set, the sun would rise, and to not feel bad trying to find beauty, because you will need that to be able to take care of your patients and move on and make the change, the difference that you need to make.
Thank you, Dr. Chill. I think that's really, really apt. Denise, I thought I saw your hand.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm an alumnus of the class from the class of 70. So even though I lived through the 60s, I came of age in the 60s, which had a lot of political upheaval, I've never experienced what our country is going through these days. And so my piece is reflective of the divisiveness in this country. My career, I work I have a private practice as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And so, although I've not been on the front lines of dealing with COVID patients, I would say that almost every one of my clients was so tormented by the political divisiveness going on in this country. And that was a primary topic of conversation over the last year or two, leading up to the election and beyond. And I think that I wasn't necessarily thinking of that when I created my piece, but somehow in the creative process, it came to reflect that. And trying to find some meaning and peace and where we go from here.
I think that it can really be that way when we make art. It transforms as we make it. So we are coming at the end of our time. We want to give one last great big thanks to everyone that came today, to all of the artists that participated, and to all of our speakers. Thank you so much for coming and sharing in this experience with us.
Thank you very much. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.